Have you ever had the experience of getting this close to a big opportunity in your creative career, but not quite making it? Maybe you submitted to a magazine or a gallery or an exhibition and they told you they loved your work. There just wasn't space to include it. Or maybe you entered a competition and you made it onto the shortlist, but you didn't win a prize. Maybe you pitched your TV show or your movie to a producer and they said it was terrific, really great work, just not the right thing at the right time. Or maybe you got that response when you sent your book to an agent or a publisher. Maybe you pitched for a big client project or applied for a senior role and you made it to the last 5 or even the last 2 and they gave it to someone else. Or maybe you were pitching investors or applying for funding and you were told the decision went all the way to the wire, just not in your favour. And maybe you got really positive feedback. They said you were great, your work was great, but for one reason or another, it wasn't a yes this time. At this point, it's easy to feel like giving up. It feels like you did everything and it still wasn't enough. If this happens too many times, it can feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall. You start to wonder if you're deluding yourself. But if you look carefully at the outcome and any feedback you received, it may well be telling you that you are in the ballpark. So, ballpark, as I understand it, is American for a baseball ground, a field of play. And you do not get on to a professional ballpark unless you are really, really good. As well as talent, it takes years of practice, hard work, rejection, and resilience. But getting onto the ballpark doesn't guarantee you're going to win the game. You can be on that park and lose, and keep losing for a long time. But as long as you are there, you can score points, which I think it's runs, isn't it, in baseball? I mean, it's basically a type of cricket, right? Anyway, as long as you are on the ballpark, you can score and you have a chance to win. Now, my theory is it's harder to get on the ballpark than it is to win a game once you're there. And obviously they are both insanely difficult. But getting on the park means you have reached a level of performance that is beyond the ability of mere mortals like the rest of us. Comparing the average professional to the average spectator, it's almost like comparing different species. But once you step onto the ballpark, you are among peers. Of course, lots of them will be better and more experienced than you, particularly when you're starting out. But the gap between you and them is relatively smaller than the gap between the pros on the park and the rest of us in the stands or on the sofa. So, getting onto that field is an achievement in itself. When a player achieves this, they see it as a cause for celebration, something that spurs them on to make extra efforts. And this is why that expression, in the ballpark, has come to mean within the right range or at a comparable level of performance. So if you are in the ballpark as a creative, it means your work is good enough to be worthy of serious consideration. And on another day, or in another context, or with a few changes, or maybe with a different gatekeeper, the answer may well be yes. Okay, but what difference does this make next time you are in the throes of a crushing disappointment? Well, let's be honest. In the first few moments or in the first few hours, it probably won't make much difference. This is something you really wanted, remember? So it will hurt. In fact, it probably should hurt. If it doesn't, it wasn't that important to you. So it's okay to feel the pain, to feel the disappointment. And it's important that you do what you need to process it. Immerse yourself in a new project, or take the day off. Go for a walk, watch a movie, treat yourself to a massage, or ring your best friend and ruin their day. I mean, talk it through with them. But don't dwell on the disappointment, and don't dwell in it. As soon as you can, lift up your head and look at the facts of the situation. There are 3 things to look out for here. Firstly, numbers. If you know, for instance, that there were 100 applicants for the job and you got down to the last 5, then you should be able to give yourself some credit. You were in the top 5%. Or if there were 1,000 entries to a competition and you made it onto a shortlist of 10, you were in the top 1%. Both of these numbers suggest that you are in the ballpark. The second thing to look out for is, do they invite you to apply again or to send them some more work? Do not ignore this signal, because all gatekeepers are overwhelmed with applications. So the last thing they need is more mediocre work. If they ask you to send them more work, this is therefore a strong signal that you are in the ballpark. The third thing to look at is any feedback you receive. Did they praise your work in any meaningful, i.e. specific way? If so, this is evidence that you are in the ballpark. Did they give a reason for choosing someone or something else? And if so, was this to do with the quality of your work or with other factors? If it's to do with the quality of your work, then obviously see what you can learn from it. But at this level, the feedback often tells you there was no problem with the quality of your work. Their final decision came down to other factors. For example, an editor at a big publisher says she was really close to accepting your novel, but they've just published something very similar. Or a potential client tells you they love the pitch, but their budget has just been slashed. Or they have a new boss with new priorities. Or the market has just shifted. Sometimes it just comes down to personal taste. They can see your work is great. They just liked something else better. Okay, what you are looking for in all of this is some evidence that you are in the ballpark. Be honest. Do the numbers or an invitation to resubmit or their feedback give you some realistic evidence that you are in the ballpark? So, if you have reviewed the evidence and you can honestly conclude that you are in the ballpark, then this is cause for celebration and also renewed determination, because you are now on the field of play, and if you keep playing, you can win. Okay, you may not feel like cracking open the champagne just yet, but at the very least, give yourself a bit of credit. And this is not the same as being satisfied with second best. It's about acknowledging where you are and what you have achieved and using this, as well as the gap, to do better next time. Okay?